Rosa Zimmerman had never been one to join bar crawls, but her best friend Jenny had insisted it would be good for her to get out and meet new people. That was how she found herself standing in the doorway of Murphy's Tavern at 8 on a Friday night, scanning the crowd for familiar faces while clutching a coat she already regretted wearing. "Rosa, over here." Jenny's voice cut through the noise, and Rosa spotted her waving enthusiastically near the bar. She weaved through the throng of people, most of whom seemed to already know each other from whatever mysterious social circle Jenny had tapped into this time. "I'm so glad you came," Jenny said, pulling her into a quick hug. "This is going to be amazing. We've got 7 bars lined up and everyone here is super cool." Rosa smiled, trying to match Jenny's enthusiasm. At 26, she was starting to feel like her social life had flatlined somewhere between her job as a veterinary assistant and her habit of spending Friday nights reorganizing her apartment. Maybe Jenny was right. Maybe this was exactly what she needed. "So who are all these people?" Rosa asked, accepting the vodka cranberry Jenny thrust into her hand. "Just friends of friends, you know how it goes." Oh, and Marcus invited some guys from his investment firm. Apparently one of them is loaded, like seriously loaded, but Marcus won't say who. Jenny waggled her eyebrows. "Could be interesting," Rosa laughed. "You know I'm not here to hunt for rich guys, right? I know. You're here to have fun and be spontaneous for once in your life." Jenny clinked her glass against Rosa's. "Now drink up. We're moving to the next place in 20 minutes. The first bar blurred into the second, which blurred into the third. Rosa found herself laughing more than she had in months, swept up in the energy of the group. There were about 15 of them total, and while she didn't catch everyone's names, she was starting to recognize faces. There was Marcus, Jenny's boyfriend, who worked in finance. His friend David, who told terrible jokes. A woman named Stephanie who worked in marketing and had an infectious laugh. And then there was Owen Young. Rosa didn't actually meet him until the 4th bar, a place called the Brass Lion that had exposed brick walls and dim lighting that made everything feel intimate despite the crowd. She'd gone to the bar to order a water, trying to pace herself, when someone stepped up beside her at the exact same moment. "Sorry," she said automatically, starting to move aside. "No, you were here first," a deep voice replied. She looked up and found herself staring into the warmest brown eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it a few times, and a jaw that could have been carved from stone. He wore a simple black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk all day. "We can both order at the same time," Rosa said, finding her voice. "I'm pretty sure they're capable of multitasking." His lips curved into a smile that did something strange to her heartbeat. "Fair point, I'm Owen." "Rosa." The bartender appeared and they both ordered. Owen got a whiskey neat. Rosa got her water and, feeling suddenly self-conscious about being the only sober one, added a gin and tonic to the order. "You're with Marcus's group, right?" Owen asked as they waited. "Sort of. My best friend is dating Marcus. I'm the tag-along who doesn't actually know anyone." "That makes 2 of us. Marcus and I work together." "Oh, so you're one of the finance guys, guilty as charged." He accepted his drink from the bartender and waited while Rosa collected hers. "Though I promise I'm not as boring as that makes me sound. I don't know, finance can be interesting. All those numbers and market trends and, okay, I have no idea what I'm talking about." Owen laughed, a genuine sound that made her smile. "What do you do?" "I'm a vet assistant. So I spend my days convincing cats to cooperate and explaining to dog owners that no, their Labrador shouldn't weigh 60 pounds. That actually sounds a lot more interesting than what I do, which is moving money around and trying to make more money appear. See, boring. Before Rosa could respond, Jenny appeared at her elbow, slightly unsteady on her feet. Rosa, we're heading to the next place. Come on, I should. Rosa gestured vaguely toward Jenny. Right. Maybe I'll see you at the next stop, Owen said. Maybe. The fifth bar was called the Copper Kettle, and it was more crowded than the previous ones. Rosa lost track of Jenny almost immediately in the crush of people. She was trying to navigate toward what might have been their group when she felt a hand on her lower back. Easy there, Owen's voice said in her ear, steadying her as someone pushed past. She turned, finding him right behind her. Are you following me? Considering we're on the same bar crawl, I'd say it's more of a happy coincidence. They ended up at a high top table in the corner, just the two of them. The rest of the group was scattered throughout the bar, and Rosa could see Jenny dancing near the jukebox with Marcus. She should probably feel guilty about abandoning her friend, but Jenny looked happy, and Rosa was exactly where she wanted to be. So tell me about the most memorable animal you've worked with, Owen said, leaning across the table so she could hear him over the music. Rosa thought for a moment. There was this parrot named Fitzgerald who only spoke in Shakespeare quotes. His owner was an English professor. Fitz came in because he'd somehow gotten into her makeup and eaten half a lipstick. Was he okay? Oh, he was fine, but he spent the entire examination quoting Macbeth at us. The vet was trying to check his crop, and Fitz looks him dead in the eye and says, "Out, damned spot." Owen's laugh was loud enough to turn a few heads. That's incredible. What about you? Any memorable moments from the world of finance? His expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. Nothing as entertaining as a Shakespeare quoting parrot. Most of my memorable moments involve spreadsheets and conference calls. Come on, there has to be something. I once convinced a client not to invest in a company that went bankrupt 3 months later. Does that count? That's actually pretty impressive. It's part of the job. He took a sip of his drink, and Rosa noticed he'd been nursing the same whiskey for a while. What made you want to work with animals? I've always loved them. Growing up, I was the kid who brought home every stray, drove my mom crazy. She finally told me if I was going to keep collecting animals, I needed to learn how to take care of them properly, so I did. Do you have any pets now? 2 cats, Milton and Ophelia. Before you ask, yes, they're both named after literary characters. I went through a phase. Let me guess. Milton is orange and chaotic. Ophelia is black and dramatic. Rosa blinked. How did you know that? Lucky guess based on the names. He grinned. Am I right? Eerily accurate. Milton is a orange tabby who thinks he's a dog, and Ophelia is a black cat who sits in the window and stares out like she's contemplating the mysteries of the universe. They talked until someone from the group came to collect them for the 6th bar. Rosa couldn't remember the last time she'd connected with someone this easily. Owen was funny without trying too hard, and he actually listened when she talked, asking follow-up questions that showed he was genuinely interested. The 6th bar was called the Silver Spur, and it had a Western theme that was either ironic or genuine. Rosa couldn't quite tell. The group was starting to thin out, people peeling off to head home or to other plans. Jenny was still going strong, but she gave Rosa a knowing look when she saw her walk in with Owen. I'm going to hear about this later, Rosa muttered. About what? Owen asked innocently. Jenny's already planning our wedding in her head. We've known each other for 2 hours. You clearly don't know Jenny. They found themselves at the bar again because apparently that was their spot. Owen ordered another whiskey and Rosa got a vodka soda, figuring she should probably eat something soon before the alcohol caught up with her. Can I ask you something? Owen said. Sure. Why did you come tonight? You said you don't really do bar crawls. Rosa considered the question. Honestly, I've been in a rut. Work, home, repeat. Jenny thought I needed to shake things up, meet new people. She wasn't wrong. I'm glad she convinced you. What about you? You don't strike me as the bar crawl type either. What type do I strike you as? I don't know. Someone who has better things to do on a Friday night. Owen's expression turned serious. I used to. But lately, I've realized that working all the time isn't actually living. So when Marcus invited me, I figured why not? And how's it going so far? He looked directly at her, those brown eyes intense. Better than expected. Rosa felt heat rise to her cheeks. She was saved from responding by Jenny stumbling over, dragging Marcus with her. Last stop. Jenny announced. The Drunken Poet, and it's my favorite, so everyone has to come. The group, now down to about 8 people, made their way to the final bar. The Drunken Poet was exactly the kind of place Rosa would have chosen if she'd been planning the evening. It was quieter than the others, with bookshelves lining the walls and vintage lamps casting warm pools of light. There was a small stage in the corner where someone was playing acoustic guitar. This is perfect, Rosa said to Jenny. I knew you'd love it. Now go sit with your new boyfriend and stop pretending you're not crazy about him. Jenny. But Jenny was already gone, pulling Marcus toward the bar. Rosa shook her head and looked around for Owen. He was at a table near the window, 2 drinks already waiting. You're efficient, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. I pay attention. Vodka soda, right? Right. She took a sip, then set the glass down. Can I ask you something now? Fair's fair. Why do you seem so, I don't know, guarded when you talk about your job? Owen was quiet for a long moment. That's perceptive of you. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. No, it's okay. It's just, people make assumptions when they find out what I do, especially about how much money I make. It changes how they interact with me. I'm not going to ask you for your bank account balance if that's what you're worried about. That's not what I meant. It's more subtle than that. People start acting differently, like they're on their best behavior or trying to impress me. I just wanted one night where I could be a normal guy talking to a beautiful woman without all that other noise. Rosa's heart skipped at the word beautiful. For what it's worth, I don't care about any of that. I mean, obviously you're successful if you work with Marcus, but that's not why I've been talking to you all night. Why have you been talking to me all night? Because you make me laugh. And you asked about Fitzgerald the parrot, and you guessed correctly about my cats. Owen smiled. Those are good reasons. They stayed at the Drunken Poet until last call. The bar crawl officially ended, but neither of them seemed ready for the night to be over. They stood outside on the sidewalk while Jenny and Marcus said goodbye to the remaining stragglers. I should get a cab, Rosa said, even though she didn't move. Me too, Owen replied, not moving either. This was fun. It really was. There was a moment where Rosa thought he might kiss her, but instead he pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? I'd like to see you again. Without the bar crawl. Rosa tried not to look too eager as she rattled off her number. Owen called it immediately so she'd have his, and her phone buzzed in her pocket. Text me when you get home safe, he asked. Only if you do the same. Jenny appeared then, tugging on Rosa's arm. Our cab's here. Come on. Rosa let herself be pulled away, glancing back to see Owen still standing there, watching her with a smile on his face. In the cab, Jenny immediately pounced. Oh my God, Rosa, that guy is into you. We just talked for 4 hours, through 6 bars. Rosa, he couldn't take his eyes off you. We exchanged numbers. And, are you going to see him again, maybe, if he actually texts? He texted before Rosa even made it home. Just a simple "tonight was great, have a good night," but it made her smile like an idiot in the back of the cab. She texted back when she got home, and they ended up messaging until 3 in the morning, stupid stuff about their favorite movies and whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Rosa fell asleep with her phone in her hand, feeling lighter than she had in months. Owen asked her to dinner 2 days later. They went to a small Italian place in Brooklyn, the kind of neighborhood spot that didn't have a website and relied entirely on word of mouth. Owen had asked if she liked Italian, and when she said yes, he'd insisted he knew the perfect place. He was right. Rosa ordered the carbonara, and Owen got the osso buco. They shared a bottle of wine and talked like they'd known each other for years instead of days. Owen told her about growing up in Connecticut as the youngest of 3 brothers, always trying to keep up with the older ones. Rosa shared stories about her childhood in New Jersey, about her mom who'd passed away 5 years ago and her dad who'd remarried and moved to Florida. "You see him often?" Owen asked. "A few times a year. We FaceTime every week, but it's not the same. His wife is nice, though. She makes him happy. That's what matters. What about your family? Are you close with your brothers?" "Yes and no. We're very different people, but we show up for each other when it counts. My oldest brother is a surgeon in Boston. The middle one is a professor at Yale. Then there's me, the one who chose money over meaning, according to my mother." Ouch. She doesn't mean it badly. She's just very into public service and philanthropy. She thinks I waste my talents on making rich people richer. You ever think she's right? Owen set down his fork. Sometimes. More often lately, actually. Why lately? I turned 32 last month, and I realized I've spent the last decade building something I'm not sure I even believe in anymore. The money is good, but it's not fulfilling. Does that make sense? Complete sense. I feel like that sometimes with my job, too. I love the animals, but the pay is terrible, and I'm not sure I want to be an assistant forever. What would you do instead? Maybe go back to school, become a full vet, or open my own shelter. I don't know. Dreams are expensive. Owen nodded like he understood exactly what she meant. They walked through Brooklyn after dinner, and Owen took her hand at some point between the restaurant and the waterfront. It felt natural, easy, like they'd been doing this for years. They stood looking at the Manhattan skyline across the water, and Owen told her about the first time he'd come to New York, how overwhelming and magical it had seemed. "You still love it?" Rosa asked. "Most days. Some days it's just noise and crowds and people moving too fast. Those are the days you have to find the quiet spots. Like that last bar, the Drunken Poet. We should go back there, just us, not as part of a crawl. I'd like that." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Rosa felt her entire world tilt on its axis. When they broke apart, Owen was smiling. "I've been wanting to do that since the bar crawl," he admitted. "What took you so long? Didn't want to be presumptuous." Consider this permission to be a little presumptuous. They went on 3 more dates over the next 2 weeks. Coffee on a Sunday morning, a movie on Wednesday night, brunch on a Saturday where they accidentally spent 4 hours talking and missed an entire showing of the film they'd planned to see after. Rosa still didn't know exactly what Owen did for work, just that it involved investments and required him to travel occasionally. He mentioned clients and deals but never went into specifics, and she didn't push. She was more interested in learning that he volunteered at a food bank on Sundays, that he was allergic to shellfish, that he'd been a terrible student until high school when a teacher convinced him he was actually smart. On their 5th date, Owen invited her to his apartment for dinner. He lived in Tribeca, which should have been Rosa's first clue that he was doing better than okay financially, but she was too nervous about the dinner to think about it. This felt like a step forward, more intimate than public dates. His apartment was on the 20th floor of a building with a doorman, and when Owen opened the door, Rosa tried not to let her jaw drop. The space was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Hudson River. The furniture was modern but comfortable, and there was actual art on the walls, not posters. "This is your apartment?" she asked. "Yeah, is it too much? I know it's kind of big for one person." "It's beautiful. I mean, my entire apartment could fit in your living room, but it's beautiful." Owen looked uncomfortable. "I told you people react differently when they know about the money." "I'm not reacting differently. I'm just processing." "Owen, exactly how much money are we talking about here?" He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "A lot. More than I probably deserve." "What does that mean?" "It means I didn't just happen to do well in finance. My company manages billions in assets. I'm the CEO and majority owner. I've done very well for myself." Rosa sat down on the couch because her legs suddenly felt unsteady. "When you say very well..." "I'm a billionaire, Rosa, with a B." The word hung in the air between them. Rosa looked around the apartment with new eyes, seeing all the things she'd missed before. The expensive coffee maker in the kitchen, the designer furniture. The fact that this apartment probably cost more than she'd make in her entire lifetime. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked quietly. "Because I liked that you didn't know. You treated me like a normal person. Do you know how rare that is? I'm still treating you like a normal person. You're still the same guy who spent 4 hours talking to me about cats and parrots." "Am I? Or are you already thinking about all the ways this changes things?" Rosa considered the question honestly. "I'm not going to lie, this is a lot to process, but it doesn't change the fact that I like you. It doesn't change the fact that you make me laugh, and that I look forward to your texts, and that kissing you feels like coming home." Owen crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "I should have told you sooner. I was just scared that once you knew, everything would change. The only thing that changes is now I know why you were so weird about talking about work." "I wasn't weird. You were a little weird." He smiled and the tension broke. "Will you stay for dinner?" "I promise I'm not a billionaire in the kitchen. I'm just a guy who makes decent pasta." "You're making pasta, unless you'd rather order in." "No, I want to see this. A billionaire who cooks his own food." Dinner was surprisingly normal. Owen made Casio e pepe while Rosa sat at the kitchen island and told him about her day. A golden retriever had come in with an ear infection, and the owner had cried when Rosa told her it was nothing serious. A cat named Princess had scratched one of the vets, and they'd all agreed the cat's name was ironic. "You ever get tired of it?" Owen asked, grating cheese. "The animals, never. The owners can be exhausting, but the animals make up for it." "You really love it." "I do. It's not glamorous or high-paying, but it matters, at least to me." Owen was quiet for a moment. "I admire that you know what matters to you and you do it anyway. As opposed to doing what makes sense financially or what other people think you should do." "Is that what you did?" "Maybe. I'm good at what I do, and the money is obviously great, but I'm not sure it's what I would have chosen if I'd known I had other options." They ate dinner by the windows, watching boats move along the Hudson. Rosa kept waiting for the weirdness to set in, for the knowledge of Owen's wealth to change how she felt, but it didn't. He was still the same person, maybe even more real now that she knew the truth. After dinner, they curled up on the couch and watched a documentary about octopuses that Rosa had been wanting to see. Owen fell asleep halfway through, his head on her shoulder, and Rosa felt a surge of affection so strong it almost hurt. This was dangerous territory. She was falling for him, hard and fast, and there was no guarantee it would work out. They came from different worlds. He was a billionaire CEO who lived in Tribeca, and she was a vet assistant from Jersey who could barely afford her studio in Astoria. But when Owen woke up and smiled at her sleepily, Asking if he'd missed the end of the movie, Rosa decided she didn't care about the logistics. She'd figure it out as they went. Things were good for the next month. Better than good, actually. Rosa felt like she was living in a dream, the kind where everything clicked into place. Owen was thoughtful and funny, and made her feel like the most important person in the world. He'd show up at her apartment with coffee before work, or text her silly memes in the middle of the day, or plan elaborate dates that somehow always ended up being exactly what she needed. But there were complications, too. Owen traveled for work, sometimes for days at a time, and the distance was harder than Rosa expected. She wasn't good at the whole texting and FaceTime thing, and she found herself feeling anxious and clingy in a way she didn't like. Then there was the money issue. Owen never made her feel bad about it, but Rosa was acutely aware of the difference in their lifestyles. When he suggested a weekend trip to Paris, she had to explain that she couldn't afford the time off work, let alone the flight. When they went out to dinner, she insisted on splitting the check, even though she knew Owen could have bought the entire restaurant without blinking. "You don't have to do that," Owen said one night after she'd handed the waiter her card. "I want to contribute. I don't want to be the girlfriend who just takes and takes. You're not taking anything. I want to do nice things for you. And I appreciate that, but I need to feel like an equal partner in this relationship." Owen looked like he wanted to argue but thought better of it. "Okay. But for the record, you are an equal partner. The money doesn't change that." Except it did, in ways Rosa was still figuring out. It wasn't just about splitting checks or who paid for what. It was about the assumptions people made when they saw them together. The way waiters and store clerks treated Owen versus how they treated her. It was about the fact that Owen's life was so much bigger and more complicated than hers, full of obligations and expectations she couldn't begin to understand. One Friday night, about 6 weeks after they'd met, Jenny texted Rosa asking if she wanted to do another bar crawl. Some of the same people from before, plus a few new additions. "Want to go?" Rosa asked Owen. They were at her apartment attempting to assemble a bookshelf from IKEA that was proving more complicated than anticipated. "The bar crawl thing? Yeah, Jenny's organizing another one. Could be fun." Owen looked uncertain. "I don't know, those aren't really my scene. You came to the last one. That was different. I didn't know anyone, so there was no pressure. Now people know who I am and it gets weird." "What do you mean?" "I mean Marcus told some people about my company, and now everyone treats me differently. They're either trying to pitch me investment ideas or acting like I'm going to judge them for not being successful enough. Jenny's not like that. Neither is Marcus, I know, but it's still awkward." Rosa set down the Allen wrench she'd been holding. "So what are you saying? We can't do normal social things because you're rich and it makes people uncomfortable. That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Owen was quiet for a long moment. "I just wanted to spend the evening with you." "Just us? Is that so bad?" "No, but I can't live in a bubble, Owen. I have friends. I have a life outside of you. I know that. I'm not asking you to give up your friends. It kind of feels like you are. They didn't fight often, but when they did, it was usually about stuff like this." The ways their different lives bumped up against each other, creating friction neither of them knew how to smooth over. In the end, Rosa went to the bar crawl without Owen. It felt strange being there without him, especially when they ended up at some of the same bars from that first night. Jenny noticed Rosa's mood and pulled her aside at the third stop. "What's going on with you and Owen?" she asked. "Nothing. Everything's fine." "Rosa, you've checked your phone about 50 times in the last hour. That's not fine." Rosa sighed. "It's complicated. The money thing is harder than I thought it would be." "Because he has it or because you don't?" "Both. I don't know. I just feel like we're living in different worlds sometimes, and I'm not sure how to bridge that gap. Do you love him? The question caught Rosa off guard. Did she love Owen? She'd been carefully not thinking about it, not putting that label on her feelings, because love felt too big, too terrifying. I don't know, she said finally. Maybe. Then figure it out, Rosa. Because that guy is crazy about you, and if the only problem is money, that's the dumbest reason I've ever heard to let someone go. The group moved to the fourth bar, and Rosa tried to focus on having fun. But she kept thinking about Owen, about the look on his face when she'd left his apartment earlier. He'd kissed her goodbye and told her to have fun, but there'd been something sad in his eyes. The fourth bar was the Brass Lion, the same place where Rosa and Owen had first really talked. She stood at the bar waiting to order, remembering how Owen had appeared beside her, how easy and natural it had felt. "Is this spot taken?" a familiar voice said. Rosa spun around to find Owen standing there, looking slightly sheepish. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I called Jenny and asked where you guys were. I'm sorry about earlier. You were right. I can't hide from the world just because some people are weird about money. You came all the way here to tell me that." "I came because I didn't want you to think I don't care about the things that matter to you. Your friends, your life, all of it matters because it's part of you." Rosa felt tears prick her eyes. "You're really here." "I'm really here." "Now, can we please get a drink and pretend I didn't just do something embarrassingly romantic?" They got their drinks and found a table, just like they had the first time. The rest of the group was scattered throughout the bar, giving them space. Rosa reached across the table and took Owen's hand. "I'm falling in love with you," she said, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "And that terrifies me because we're so different, and I don't know how this is supposed to work, but I can't stop it from happening." Owen's eyes widened. "You're falling in love with me." "Is that weird to say? It's probably too soon. Forget I said anything." "Rosa, stop. I'm falling in love with you too, have been since the bar crawl, maybe even since you told me about the Shakespeare quoting parrot." "Really, really. And you're right, it is terrifying. But I don't want to stop it from happening either." They left the bar crawl early, heading back to Owen's apartment because it was closer. They made love for the first time that night, slow and tender and perfect. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in Owen's massive bed, and Rosa felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. "What are we going to do about all the stuff we keep fighting about?" she asked. "We'll figure it out, together. I can be more aware of when I'm being weird about money and social stuff. You can tell me when I'm being an idiot." "You're not an idiot. I was earlier. I should have just come with you in the first place. You're here now. That's what matters." Over the next few months, they found their rhythm. Owen made an effort to be more present in Rosa's world, meeting her co-workers and joining her for trivia nights at her favorite bar. Rosa let herself be more comfortable with Owen's wealth, accepting that he genuinely wanted to share his life with her, expensive parts included. They still ended up at the Brass Lion more often than not. It became their spot, the place they'd go when they needed to reconnect or celebrate or just be together. The bartender learned their orders, and they had a favorite table by the window. One night, about 4 months after they'd met, they were at the Brass Lion for what Owen had said was just a casual drink. But Rosa could tell he was nervous about something. He kept fidgeting with his napkin and checking his phone. "What's going on with you?" she asked finally. "Nothing." "Why?" "Because you're acting weird. Weirder than usual." Owen laughed. "I'm not sure whether to be offended by that." "Seriously, what's up?" He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about making some changes at work, stepping back from the day-to-day operations, hiring a president to run things. I want more time for other stuff." "Other stuff like what?" "Like spending time with you. like figuring out what actually makes me happy instead of just what makes money, like volunteering more at the food bank and maybe starting a foundation to fund animal shelters. Rosa's heart skipped. Animal shelters. You've talked about wanting to open one. I thought maybe I could help make that happen. Not for you, but with you, if you wanted. Owen, that's huge. I know it's a lot to think about, and I'm not trying to swoop in and take over your dream. But I have resources, and I want to use them for something meaningful. Something we could build together. Rosa felt overwhelmed in the best possible way. You'd really do that? I'd really do that. I've actually already talked to some people about locations and funding models. But only if it's something you want. This has to be your decision. She kissed him then, right there in the bar, not caring who saw. Yes, yes, I want that. I want all of it. Yeah, yeah. They spent the rest of the night talking about possibilities, about what their shelter could look like and who it could help. Owen had clearly done his research, and Rosa was touched by how seriously he was taking her dream. When did you become this person? She asked as they were leaving. What person? This person who wants to open animal shelters and step back from work to have a life. I've always been this person. I just needed the right reason to let him out. And I'm the right reason. You're the best reason. 6 months after they met, Owen took Rosa back to the Brass Lion on a Friday night. They'd been there dozens of times by now, but there was something different about the atmosphere. The lighting seemed softer, and their favorite table had a reserved sign on it. Did you call ahead? Rosa asked. Maybe. They sat down and Owen ordered their usual drinks, but he was nervous again, that same fidgety energy from before, only amplified. Owen, what's going on? I need to tell you something. Actually, I need to ask you something. Rosa's heart started racing. She had a sudden idea of where this was going, but she didn't want to jump to conclusions. Okay. Owen reached across the table and took both her hands in his. This place is important to us. This is where we first really talked, where we started falling in love. I know we've only known each other for 6 months, and maybe that's not long enough by some standards, but I don't care. I know what I want, and I want you. Owen. Wait, let me finish. You've changed my entire life, Rosa. You've made me want to be better, do better. You've shown me what actually matters, and it's not the money or the company or any of that. It's this. It's us. It's building something meaningful together. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Rosa's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple but stunning diamond ring. Rosa Zimmerman, will you marry me? Tears were streaming down her face. Yes. Oh my God, yes. Owen slipped the ring onto her finger, and then they were both crying and laughing at the same time. The entire bar burst into applause, and Rosa realized Owen must have told the staff what he was planning. You're sneaky, she said through her tears. I wanted it to be special. This place is ours. It really is. They called Jenny immediately, of course, and she screamed so loud Owen had to hold the phone away from his ear. Within an hour, their friends had descended on the Brass Lion to celebrate. Marcus bought a round for the entire bar. Jenny kept hugging Rosa and crying. Even David showed up and told a terrible joke about marriage that somehow made everyone laugh anyway. Late in the night, when things had calmed down and most of their friends had left, Rosa and Owen found themselves alone at their table again. She kept looking at the ring on her finger, unable to believe it was real. I can't believe this is my life, she said. Good unbelievable or bad unbelievable, the best unbelievable. They got married 8 months later in a small ceremony at a botanical garden. Rosa's dad walked her down the aisle, crying the entire time. Owen's brothers stood as his groomsmen, and Jenny was Rosa's maid of honor. It was simple and perfect, and exactly what they both wanted. The animal shelter opened a year after that. They'd found a property in Queens, an old warehouse that they converted into a state-of-the-art facility. Rosa quit her job as a vet assistant to run the shelter full-time, and Owen scaled back his work hours to help. They called it Second Chances, and it quickly became one of the most respected shelters in the city. Owen had been right about wanting more meaning in his life. He threw himself into the shelter work with the same intensity he'd once reserved for business deals. Rosa watched him bond with a three-legged pit bull named Max, and she fell in love with him all over again. "You're good at this," she told him one day as he was bottle-feeding a litter of orphaned kittens. "At what? At caring, at being present, at all of this. I learned from the best." They adopted Max, of course, along with two of the kittens Owen had bottle-fed. Their apartment became a menagerie, and Owen never once complained about the chaos. He'd come home from work to find cats on every surface and Max sprawled across the couch, and he'd just smile and ask what was for dinner. 2 years after they got married, Rosa found out she was pregnant. They were at the Brass Lion, naturally, when she told him. She'd been planning something elaborate, but in the end, she just blurted it out between bites of their appetizer. "I'm pregnant." Owen dropped his fork. "You're what?" "Pregnant. We're having a baby." He was around the table in seconds, pulling her into his arms. "We're having a baby." "Oh my God, Rosa, we're having a baby. Are you happy?" "I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life." They had a girl, Olivia Marie Young, with Rosa's dark eyes and Owen's smile. She was perfect in every way, and watching Owen with their daughter made Rosa's heart ache with happiness. He was a natural father, patient and playful and completely devoted. On Olivia's first birthday, they took her to the Brass Lion. It felt important to bring her to the place where their story had really begun. The bartender, who'd been there since the beginning, brought out a special non-alcoholic mocktail for Olivia and made a fuss over how big she'd gotten. "Can you believe it's been 3 years since we met?" Rosa asked as they sat at their table. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like you've been part of my life forever. Both things can be true." Olivia banged her hands on the table, demanding attention, and they both laughed. This was their life now, messy and chaotic and more wonderful than Rosa had ever imagined possible. "You ever regret it?" Owen asked. "Taking a chance on the rich guy at the bar crawl? Not for a single second. Do you regret coming to that bar crawl in the first place? Best decision I ever made." They clinked their glasses together while Olivia squealed happily. The bar was crowded, full of people living their own stories, but Rosa felt like she and Owen existed in their own little bubble. Their own perfect world that had started with a chance encounter and turned into everything she'd never known she wanted. 2 years later, they had a son, Henry Owen Young. He was calmer than Olivia, more thoughtful, and he had Rosa's love of animals. By the time he was 2, he could identify a dozen different breeds of dogs and insisted on helping at the shelter whenever possible. The shelter had grown too. They'd expanded twice and were now helping hundreds of animals every year. Rosa had hired a staff of 10, and Owen had established a foundation that funded similar shelters across the country. It was more than they'd dreamed of that night at the Brass Lion when Owen had first proposed the idea. Life wasn't perfect. They still fought sometimes, usually about stupid things like whose turn it was to take the trash out or whether they should let Olivia get a hamster. Owen still traveled for work occasionally, and Rosa still struggled with feeling like she wasn't contributing enough financially, even though Owen had long since made it clear that her work at the shelter was invaluable. But the fights never lasted long, and they always found their way back to each other. Usually at the Brass Lion, which had become their relationship therapy of sorts. Whenever things got tense or complicated, They'd get a babysitter and spend an evening at their table by the window, remembering why they'd fallen in love in the first place. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they went to the Brass Lion, just the two of them. The kids were with Jenny and Marcus, who'd gotten married the year before. Rosa wore the same dress she'd worn on their first date, and Owen wore his black button-down. "We're becoming creatures of habit," Owen said as they sat down. "Is that a bad thing?" "Not at all. I like our habits." They ordered their drinks, the same ones they'd ordered on that first bar crawl. The bartender, Charlie, knew them well enough by now to just start making their drinks when he saw them walk in. "Charlie says he's going to put a plaque on this table," Owen said. "The Owen and Rosa table." "He's joking." "I don't know, he seemed pretty serious." Rosa laughed. "That would be ridiculous, would it though? This table has seen a lot. First real conversation, first time you told me you loved me, the proposal, bringing Olivia for her first birthday. When you put it that way, maybe the plaque isn't such a bad idea." They talked about everything and nothing, the way they always did. Work and kids and friends and plans for the future. Owen mentioned wanting to step back even further from the company, maybe transitioning to a purely advisory role. Rosa talked about her idea to start a program teaching underprivileged kids about animal care. "We're pretty lucky, aren't we?" Rosa said at one point. "Incredibly lucky. Do you ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't both ended up at that bar crawl? All the time. And then I'm grateful to Jenny for being pushy and to Marcus for inviting me, and to whatever cosmic force made sure we ended up at the same bar over and over again that night." "It wasn't cosmic force. It was just bar crawl logistics. Let me have my romantic notion." "Fine. Cosmic force it is." When they got home that night, the babysitter reported that both kids had been angels. Olivia was asleep in her bed, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. Henry was in his crib, one arm thrown over his head. Rosa and Owen stood in the doorway of Henry's room, watching him sleep. "We made that," Owen whispered. "We made both of them, and the shelter, and this whole life. Best collaboration ever." They went to bed, and Rosa curled up against Owen's chest, listening to his heartbeat. This was everything she'd never known to want. The person who made her laugh, who supported her dreams, who showed up even when it was hard. The family they'd built together. The life they'd created from nothing more than a chance encounter at a bar crawl. "I love you," she murmured, already half asleep. "I love you too. Always." As Rosa drifted off, she thought about that first night, how nervous she'd been, how uncertain, how she'd almost not gone at all. If Jenny hadn't been so persistent, if Marcus hadn't invited Owen, if they hadn't kept ending up at the same bars throughout the night, none of this would exist. But they had. And it did. And Rosa fell asleep grateful for every coincidence, every chance, every moment that had led them to each other. Years passed, as they do. Olivia grew into a bright, curious 8-year-old who wanted to be a marine biologist. Henry, at 6, was quieter but equally determined, already talking about becoming a veterinarian like his mom. They both volunteered at the shelter on weekends, though Olivia was more interested in the administrative side while Henry wanted to work directly with the animals. The shelter had become Rosa's greatest pride. They'd helped thousands of animals find homes and had started partnerships with shelters across the country. Owen's foundation funded dozens of similar projects, and together, they'd created something that would outlast them both. Owen had fully stepped back from the company, transitioning to a board position that required minimal time. He spent most of his days at the shelter now, working alongside Rosa. They made a good team, always had. Owen handled the business side, the budgets and the fundraising, while Rosa focused on the animals and the staff. One Saturday morning, when Olivia was 9 and Henry was 7, The whole family was at the shelter. Olivia was helping update the website with photos of new arrivals. Henry was in the kitten room, bottle feeding a tiny orange tabby who'd been found abandoned in a cardboard box. Owen was meeting with a potential donor, and Rosa was giving a tour to a young couple looking to adopt their first dog. This was her favorite part of the job, matching animals with the right families. She could usually tell within minutes whether it would work, some instinct she'd developed over years of doing this. The couple she was with now seemed perfect for Bruno, a gentle giant of a mixed breed who just wanted someone to love. When Bruno and the couple met, it was love at first sight. The dog immediately rolled over for belly rubs, and the couple melted. Rosa started the paperwork, already knowing this was going to be a successful match. Owen found her in the office later, looking pleased with himself. The donor came through. We've got full funding for the expansion. Rosa jumped up and hugged him. They'd been planning to add another wing to the shelter for months, but had been waiting on funding. That's incredible. Owen, this means we can help so many more animals. I know. We did good, Rosa. We really did. That night they celebrated with the kids at their favorite pizza place. Not some fancy restaurant, just a neighborhood spot with red checkered tablecloths and a jukebox in the corner. Olivia and Henry argued over what toppings to get, eventually settling on half pepperoni, half mushroom. Owen snuck quarters to the kids for the jukebox, and they filled the restaurant with an eclectic mix of 80s pop and current hits. "This is nice," Rosa said, watching Henry dance to a song she didn't recognize. "It is," Owen agreed. "You ever miss the old life? The fancy dinners and the business deals?" Owen looked at her like she'd grown a second head. "Are you kidding? This is everything I ever wanted. You, the kids, the shelter, all of it. The old life was just empty. Even with all the money, especially with all the money. Money doesn't mean anything if you don't have people to share it with, causes you believe in, a purpose. You taught me that. I think you figured it out on your own. I just happened to be there. You were more than there. You were the catalyst for everything." Later, when the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, Owen and Rosa sat on their balcony looking out at the city. They'd moved to a bigger place in Brooklyn a few years ago, somewhere with space for the kids and the growing collection of rescue animals. It wasn't as fancy as Owen's old Tribeca apartment, but it was home. "I was thinking," Owen said, "maybe we should do another bar crawl." Rosa laughed. "We're in our 30s with 2 kids. Bar crawls are for people in their 20s. We could make it a date night thing. Hit a few bars, end at the Brass Lion like old times. You just want an excuse to tell the story of how we met again. Maybe it's a good story. It is a good story." They did the bar crawl 2 weeks later, kid-free thanks to Jenny and Marcus. It was strange and wonderful, retracing their steps from that first night. Some of the bars had changed, new owners or new names. But the Brass Lion was exactly the same, and when they walked in, Charlie greeted them like the regulars they were. "Your table's waiting," he said with a wink. They sat down, and Rosa felt a wave of nostalgia. "I can't believe it's been almost a decade since that first night." "Best night of my life," Owen said. "Better than our wedding, different category. That night was the beginning of everything." They stayed until closing, talking and laughing and remembering. When Charlie finally kicked them out, they stood outside on the sidewalk just like they had that first night. "I should get a cab," Rosa said, echoing her words from years ago. "Me too," Owen played along. "This was fun." It really was. "Same time next week," Owen grinned. "Always." They made the bar crawl an annual tradition, their anniversary of sorts. Every year they'd retrace those steps, ending always at the Brass Lion. Charlie did eventually put up a plaque, though it wasn't on their table. It was by the bar. a small brass plaque that said, "Where Love Stories Begin." Rosa cried when she saw it. The years continued to pass in a blur of soccer games and school plays and shelter events. Olivia got into a prestigious high school with a focus on science. Henry became the youngest volunteer in the shelter's history to successfully foster a difficult case, a traumatized pit bull who everyone had thought was unadoptable. Owen's hair started going gray at the temples, which Rosa thought made him look distinguished. She'd gained some weight after the kids, which Owen said just meant there was more of her to love. They were getting older, but they were getting older together, and that made all the difference. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Rosa with a trip. Not to Paris or some exotic location, but to Connecticut to visit his childhood home. "I want to show you where I came from," he said. "Really show you, not just tell you." They drove up on a Saturday morning, leaving the kids with Owen's brother for the weekend. Owen's mother still lived in the house where he'd grown up, a rambling colonial with a huge backyard. She welcomed Rosa with a warm hug and immediately pulled her into the kitchen for tea. "I need to tell you something," Owen's mother said, pouring hot water into delicate china cups. "When Owen first told me about you, I was skeptical. Not because of you, but because of him. He'd been so focused on work for so long, I wasn't sure he knew how to let someone in." "He let me in pretty easily," Rosa said. "That's what I'm trying to say. You changed him. You made him remember what matters. I'm grateful to you for that." Rosa felt tears sting her eyes. "He changed me too, made me braver, more willing to dream big. You're good for each other. That's all a mother can ask for." Owen found them crying in the kitchen and looked alarmed. "What happened?" "Nothing," his mother said. "We're just being sentimental. Now go show Rosa your old room. I'm sure she'd love to see where you plotted world domination as a teenager." Owen's childhood room was exactly what Rosa expected. Bookshelves full of finance and business books, a desk with what looked like hand-written stock analyses, a map of the world with pins marking different stock exchanges. "You were a nerd," Rosa said affectionately. "I prefer the term focused, nerd." They spent the weekend exploring Owen's past. He showed her the high school where he'd discovered his love of economics, the park where he'd had his first kiss, the library where he'd spent every Saturday studying. Each place added another layer to her understanding of him, another piece of the puzzle that made up the man she loved. On the drive back to the city, Rosa felt closer to Owen than ever. Understanding where someone came from, what shaped them, it was intimate in a way that surprised her. "Thank you for bringing me here," she said. "Thank you for wanting to see it. My life really does divide into before you and after you." "That's dramatic." "It's true. Before you, I was just going through the motions. After you, everything meant something." Rosa reached over and squeezed his hand. "I love you. I love you too. Forever." Olivia turned 18 and went off to college, studying marine biology like she'd always planned. Henry was 16 and already volunteering at veterinary clinics after school. The house felt emptier with Olivia gone, but it also felt like a natural progression. This was what they'd raised their kids to do, spread their wings and fly. Rosa and Owen found themselves with more time for each other, more freedom to be spontaneous. They took long walks through Central Park. They went to museums and plays. They rediscovered the parts of their relationship that had gotten buried under parenting and work. And they still went to the Brass Lion every week, their tradition unchanged. It was their constant, their anchor in a life that kept shifting and evolving. One night when they were sitting at their usual table, Owen said, "Do you think we should tell the story? Write it down somewhere." "What story?" "Our story. How we met, how we built this life. Maybe it could inspire other people." "I think our story is pretty specific to us. I'm not sure it's replicable." Maybe not the specifics, but the core of it. Taking chances, being open to possibility, choosing love even when it's complicated. Rosa considered it. I don't know, I like that our story is just ours. Fair enough, but if you ever change your mind, you'll be the first to know. They never did write it down, but they told it often. At shelter fundraisers, at their kids' weddings years later, at the opening of their 10th shelter location. It became the story that defined them, the origin myth of their family. Olivia married a marine biologist she'd met in graduate school. They had a daughter, Emma, who Owen and Rosa immediately spoiled rotten. Henry married a veterinarian, and they opened a practice together, specializing in rescue animals. They had twin boys, Marcus and Jamie, who were tornadoes of energy and chaos. Rosa and Owen became grandparents, then retired grandparents. They stepped back from the daily operations of the shelter, handing it off to a capable staff they'd trained over the years. They still sat on the board, still showed up for events, but mostly they focused on enjoying life. They traveled, finally taking that trip to Paris Owen had suggested so many years ago. They went to Australia and saw Olivia's research facility. They spent summers in Connecticut with Owen's mother until she passed peacefully at 92. They fostered dozens more animals, their home always full of wagging tails and purring cats. And every week, without fail, they went to the Brass Lion. Charlie retired eventually, handing the bar off to his daughter, Maya. She knew Owen and Rosa's story, had grown up hearing about the couple who'd fallen in love at her father's bar. She made sure their table was always available, that their drinks were always perfect. On their 40th wedding anniversary, when Owen was 72 and Rosa was 70, they sat at their table at the Brass Lion surrounded by their entire family. Olivia and Henry and their spouses. The grandchildren, now teenagers and young adults themselves. Jenny and Marcus, still together after all these years. Even some of the staff from the shelter. Maya had closed the bar for the night, making it a private event. There was food and music and laughter. Emma, their oldest grandchild, gave a toast about how her grandparents had taught her what real love looked like. They still hold hands, Emma said. After 40 years, they still hold hands like teenagers. That's what I want someday. That's what they've shown all of us is possible. Owen squeezed Rosa's hand and she squeezed back. 40 years, and he still made her heart race. 40 years, and she still learned new things about him. 40 years, and they were still choosing each other every single day. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had filtered out, Owen and Rosa found themselves alone at their table. Maya had left them a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses, tactfully disappearing into the back. 40 years, Rosa said. Feels like 40 minutes. Liar. 40 years feels like exactly what it is, a lifetime. The best lifetime. Rosa looked around the bar, at the plaque by the counter, at the table that had seen so much of their story. Do you think we'll still be coming here in another 40 years? I don't see why not. We're creatures of habit, remember. We really are. They sat in comfortable silence, sipping champagne and watching the light from the street lamps filter through the windows. This bar, this table, this moment. It was everything and nothing, ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Thank you, Owen said quietly. For what? For saying yes. To that first drink, to the date, to the proposal, to all of it. Thank you for building this life with me. Thank you for showing up, Rosa replied. For coming to that stupid bar crawl when you didn't want to. For coming back even when it would have been easier to stay away. For choosing me every single day. Easiest choice I ever made. They finished their champagne and walked out into the night, hand in hand. The city was quieter now, less frantic than it had been when they were young. Or maybe they were just older, more attuned to the peaceful moments. Same time next week, Owen asked. Always, Rosa said, and they meant it. Next week and the week after and all the weeks to come. For as long as they had, they'd keep showing up. To the brass lion, to each other, to the life they'd built from nothing more than a chance encounter and the courage to see where it led. That was their story. Not perfect, but perfect for them. Not easy, but worth every complication. A story that started with a bar crawl and ended with a legacy of love, family, and purpose that would outlast them both. And every week, without fail, they'd sit at their table at the Brass Lion and remember how it all began. The billionaire and the vet assistant who'd never expected to keep ending up at the same bar, who'd never expected to fall so completely in love, but they had. And that made all the difference.